told myself that when Star Wars 8 was about to come out, I'd write a video on this, and predictably, I waited until the last possible minute. The question of whether Rey is a Mary Sue was debated to death back when Force Awakens was new, but I suspect it'll reignite now that The Last Jedi is debuting, and I think I have an uncommon perspective. Now, to a shitload audience, this question may generally be considered to be a settled and profound yes, while feminists would consider this view the misogynist whining of man-babies who don't want wicked vaginas in their boys' club. But I don't think that's fair, seeing as so many of Rey's haters were fine with Leia barking orders, shooting guns, and choking slugs back in the day. There's more to this question. Even some feminist writers have complained about her, like Emily Rome in her essay, "Rey is exactly the Star Wars character we've been looking for, and now we're complaining about her." Link in the description. Well, here's my essay. Warning, I will be walking through the major plot points, so spoilers abound, though I don't know why the hell you'd be watching an analysis video if you hadn't seen it. Anyway, it's important to define Mary Sue from the beginning. According to Wiki, it's an idealized and seemingly perfect fictional character. Often this character is recognized as an author insert or wish fulfillment. They can usually perform better at tasks than should be possible given the amount of training or experience. But few people can agree on what constitutes one. Some have even called the term a slur to keep women in stories down. This would be odd, since the term was invented by a woman, most fanfic authors are women, and as are most of the readers who wield Mary Sue accusations in their criticism. When women are mean to women, it's men's fault. The meaning I will be using will be an admittedly subjective one, and I know it when I see it definition of a character that seems too good to be true and is disappointing because of it, who is boring, flat, and underdeveloped, defined more by their abilities than their personality. A character whose accomplishments do not excite the audience, make them go, "Come on!" So, is Rey one? Interestingly, the writers of Force Awakens seem to be familiar with the Mary Sue concept. At times they deliberately flirt with it, at others they defy it in a way that some might consider protesting too much. It's unlikely Rey is meant to be a J.J. Abrams self-insert, but she is clearly intended to be relatable to the fandom. Tellingly, she herself is a fangirl. She's familiar with the legendary exploits of the heroes of the previous movies, and is thrilled to meet each of them, eagerly seeking their approval and giddy whenever she gets it. This is contrasted with Kylo Ren, an emo loser fanboy who cosplays the bad guy but will never be as cool, or as Rey says, as strong as Darth Vader. Yes, you were supposed to cringe when he takes off that helmet, which is definitely compensating for something. Perhaps Rey's Mary Sue accusations have worsened due to being paired up against a villain who is deliberately emasculated and disappointing. More on this later. What's more interesting is the way the writers try to dodge Mary Sue complaints without really succeeding. Rey accomplishes extraordinary feats in most of her scenes, but always with a calculated sloppiness. She bangs up the Millennium Falcon, runs from the call to adventure, is overpowered and taken by Kylo Ren, but turns the tables on him just long enough to embarrass him. Her attempt at a Jedi mind trick is clumsy and almost gets her in trouble, but works just in time. The writers knew her competence would be criticized, and wrote in this clumsiness to add tension, to make her successes more satisfying. If the audience says, "That was too easy, she shouldn't have been able to do that at this stage without help," there's a lot of evidence that can be pointed to prove it wasn't easy. However, these obstacles seem more like that, deliberate evidence, to intellectually prove that she isn't a dreaded Sue. For many, it wasn't enough to create the feeling that she was being adequately challenged. Still, I don't think any of these instances individually are enough to make her a Sue. After all, none of them are as bad as the scene where she fixes the Millennium Falcon and impresses Han. When you do a reboot, you do not have your new character one-up the legacy heroes. You do not! This is the single worst thing in the movie, and the best argument for her being a Sue. But I do like the giddy look on her face when she wins the approving smirk from Han she so longs for. Just as all of her other victories are justified by their clumsiness, the writers did everything they could do to justify her victory over the more powerful Kylo Ren. It's not hard to buy that she could win when Kylo has just killed his father, is consequently dealing with the most complex emotions of his life, was shot in the side with a weapon that could fell several lesser men, is seeing his plans fall apart, and has already had a lengthy fight with another warrior. On top of this, he has a crush on his assailant and is asking her to join him before the final blow is struck. Of course she can win! But that's the problem. If the fixing of the Falcon was the greatest insult, this is the greatest structural flaw. They made Kylo Ren the underdog. He had so much against him, I found myself almost rooting for the villain. With all this in her favor, Rey dodged accusations of being perfect, but emotionally, the result is the same. The victory is handed to her. It's not exciting because it doesn't feel like an accomplishment. I have to show the writers some compassion, because they had a few good options. It might have been more interesting if Rey had lost her first climactic battle, but if she did, they'd be pilloried for failing to deliver the cool heroine the fandom thinks it wants. It's widely theorized that Rey may have a hidden backstory, a training she forgot that could justify her advanced prowess. It'll be interesting to see whether this bears out in Last Jedi. However, if she is indeed a powerful sleeper agent of sorts, it creates a storyline much different than the archetypal and emotionally resonant hero's journey storyline Star Wars was created to embody. It might not be enough to rescue her in the eyes of her detractors. So, time for the verdict. Is Rey a Sue? In my opinion, no. She's very much on the cusp, but there's more to a Sue than how powerful she is. The true death of such characters is that their powers, skills, importance, and decorations conceal what is at core a bland and empty character. And to me, Rey isn't this. Her performance by Daisy Ridley is vulnerable and endearing. Her introduction shows us a woman scraping by, scavenging in the desert to make ends meet, and frequently being taken advantage of despite these efforts. Someone who yearns for a chance to escape, but subconsciously denies herself this chance for most of her life because she continues to pine for her parents' return despite probably knowing that this will never happen. It's a self-destructive cycle that she could only be saved from by Finn's appearance. It's a flaw that is not ornamental, but the real struggle of her character arc. In fact, a favorite detail of mine also relates to Rey and Finn's relationship. When they're attacked by the TIE Fighter, Finn drags Rey by the hand while she insists upon being able to take care of herself and not needing his help. These are stock phrases often rattled off by a certain cliché type of pseudo-feminist action girl character that became common in 90s hero cartoons. These female leads were usually generically better than their male counterparts, but often had little depth. No doubt haters of this brand of feminism were quick to roll their eyes at these lines, but the cliché hid a deeper subtlety. The fact that despite her pride, Rey did need Finn's help in that scene, or she would have been shot. Her pride was another meaningful flaw. It is also Finn who sets up her admittedly unsatisfying defeat of Kylo Ren. At this stage of the story, she does need him, and her relationship with Finn is potentially the most interesting one among the main cast, and will hopefully grow in a satisfying way in the rest of the trilogy. It's worth noting that while Rey is derided for her over-idealization, few have made any such remarks about Finn, who theoretically could have been a character that panders to black audiences in a similar manner. He's often emasculated or made a fool of, and while he has some cool scenes, and is very hot, I doubt he's the role-playable hero black sci-fi fans would hope for. It would have been nice if he and Rey had had their competence divided among them a bit more evenly, and probably would have improved both of them a bit. There's still some time for him to grow. So, back to the main idea. In conclusion, I believe that Rey is a worthwhile and interesting character, who is perhaps not best served by her presentation and the story structure. I still have hopes that the rest of the trilogy can redeem her in the eyes of some of her critics. Now for a little bonus. Some of Rey's defenders have argued not that she isn't a Mary Sue, but that Luke Skywalker is, and that Rey shouldn't be held to a different standard. So, let's entertain that idea by asking, what if Luke were a girl? Well, she'd worship and follow a man, get abused by male teachers, get her hand cut off in Ugly Cry, lose 2 of her 3 climactic battles, have her hand held by a ghost through the one she does win, and her last major act will be begging for help from Daddy while tortured. Bet the feminists would love that. I will be looking forward to seeing how Rey develops in Last Jedi, and I will record a follow-up video once I've seen it. See you then!